On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use. Welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. We are the official podcast of the Lot 1 Tailgate Party, which is at Lambeau Field every home game. This is episode 93, created December 2nd, 2024. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me, Jeff in Minnesota, and Neil on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Le Beaujolais Nouveau est arrivé, et bienvenue au chat de la Baie Verte. Oh, wait, I guess it's not a podcast about cats from Green Bay. Sorry, Jeff. Don't tell Fleet that we're not including him this week. But release of Beaujolais Nouveau is always a special time of the year. It's always the Thursday before Thanksgiving. It talks about renewal and the start of an entirely new year of wine. It's the wine of the new year. And after a tumultuous 2024, I was ready to celebrate 2024 in a positive way.
Très bien, Neil. Good evening, gentlemen. Tonight I'm having Into the Dark American Stout.
Hey, bonjour, mes amis. I have from Bare Bones Brewery in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and Oshkosh Lager. All right, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat. Just the audio is available on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify by searching for Green Bay Chat. Well, it's been a while, so we have two games to talk about, both home games, San Francisco and Miami, that one on Thanksgiving. A lot of tailgating happened in Green Bay as well, and then we'll take a look ahead this week for Week 14 at Detroit. But a five-game stretch that when we looked at the schedule in the preseason, this week was definitely marked down as something that was going to define probably the Green Bay season. Two games that we said these would be signature wins if they could land them. San Francisco, a team that is perennially one that we need to beat. Miami, a team that looked like they should have been in the playoffs all season long, but they struggled with injuries. Nonetheless, Green Bay comes away with a pair of victories and quite handily as well. Let's take them down one at a time. Neil, San Francisco, the victory 38-10, a Sunday afternoon matchup just at the start of deer hunting season.
I think it was perfect that the stadium view had Sean Jones, Leroy Butler, and Gilbert Brown specifically for episode 93, I guess. But it was good that they had three players who knew what it meant to beat San Francisco, because this is a team that has really tortured us over the last decade and a half. And it was a team that we really need to beat. We need to put them behind us. And it felt like this might be the opportunity. Now, I'm not sure I want to meet them in the playoffs. Thankfully, they seem to be injuring their way out of the playoffs. But the start of that game was absolutely everything that we wanted. The Packers get the ball and drive down the field, passing, running, touchdown to Tucker Kraft, 7-0, 3-and-out. Packers get the ball, score again. And they scored a third time. They went up 17-0 in that game, and Packers fans were having a blast at Lambeau Field.
Watching it at home I was just like shades of the mid-90s almost, some of those games. And I can only imagine what it was like in the stands at home.
Neil, you mentioned the 3-and-out. Prior to that game, San Francisco had only had a dozen 3-and-outs on the entire season. And in that game, they start with that 3-and-out. They get another one in there as well. It's indicative of, like you said, probably where San Francisco is on the season. Riddled with injuries. They certainly didn't have their starting quarterback, their starting tackle. They were short on defense. They definitely struggled throughout the entire game, and it helps Green Bay put together quite a perfect game on that Sunday.
A perfect game for large parts of it. And again, we went up 17-0, and the San Francisco 49ers had 2 3-and-outs in that period leading up to the 17-0. First quarter, Packers 8 first downs to 0 for San Francisco, 126 yards to 8 for San Francisco. This looked like it was going to be a day that was going to be extremely comfortable and extremely happy. And unfortunately, that did not last.
As is wont to happen this season, it seems like, the defense maybe gets a little complacent. But you know what? It didn't seem like there was a lot of concern, like hand-wringing, like, okay, are they going to give up this big lead or whatever? This one's to be not an easy victory, but certainly it seemed to be in hand for a lot of the game.
Yeah, Jeff, I didn't feel that in the stadium, however. Once San Francisco brought it to 17-7 at halftime, it was like, oh, crap. And San Francisco was going to get the ball first in the second half. it was definitely a situation where this game is not good, and you could see how this could turn very poorly very quickly. And indeed, in that second quarter, both teams were essentially even. And in the third quarter, actually, San Francisco handily outgained us. They had 123 yards to our 24 in the third quarter. And in those second and third quarters, it was not looking happy for this Packers team. And the Packers instead were the team that had the 3-and-outs, with 3 out of 4 drives being a 3-and-out in a sequence.
Neil, I agree with you watching from home as well. I was able to get home by halftime there. But throughout the halftime and then that third quarter, you got the feeling that we have seen this movie before, and kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with San Francisco there. And you're right, they did put up some great numbers statistically. Fortunately for Green Bay, the one statistic that matters, San Francisco could not get on the board no matter how well they moved that ball up and down the field.
Well, the other key statistic is that San Francisco decided to start shooting themselves in the foot, and the numbers were 3 turnovers for San Francisco to 0 for Green Bay. All of those turnovers in the second half, 2 of them in the fourth quarter. And that is what really turned it into a very comfortable game that it did not feel like until those turnovers were happening.
Well, it was an inexperienced quarterback for San Francisco, so that helped. And the defense finally started to get some pressure, started to be engaged, and we're making plays. So this is where we were finally seeing sort of some complementary football as well. They were getting the turnovers, and then fortunately, the offense was able to turn these into touchdowns as well.
That touchdown specifically to Malik Heath in the fourth quarter was just absolutely beautiful. That was coming right towards my direction, and you just watched that whole play develop. Beautiful. And there was also that beautiful pass to Tucker Kraft that set up the third of 3 Josh Jacobs touchdowns in the game. Josh Jacobs with a huge game with 106 rushing yards and those 3 touchdowns. Overall, our rushing game did really well. 41 rushes for our running backs and wide receivers for 167 yards with 3 touchdowns. And on the other side, our defense held Christian McCaffrey to 31 yards rushing on 11 rushes, 2.8 yards per attempt. And it was a game that was won in the trenches. It was a game that was won primarily through the ground, even though there were some good plays as far as Jordan Love was concerned and his receivers. It was a running game that dominated for us.
And it was the physicality that we're starting to see. So early in the season, even mid-season, Packers would get pushed around a little bit. These were close games. They seem to be rounding into physicality, to really want to impose their will. And personally, I think that is the sign of a team that's going to go very far into the playoffs. They're playing well together, like I said before, complementary, but they're playing very physical. They're not getting pushed around. They're using their speed. They're using their youth. And they're making the plays when they need to and when they need to count.
Talking about the defense, especially coming out of the Chicago game, I think there was a lot of concern with Quay Walker, and we were watching where he was in that Chicago game, right? And maybe he was doing what the coaches told him to do. We don't know for sure what the game plan was there, but now Quay Walker comes alive in both of these games. So he has a stellar game against San Francisco. You hear the post-game comments from Xavier McKinney. This is a veteran talking. He was able to assess what was going on in this game. He knew San Francisco was playing from behind. He knew a young quarterback wanted to try to make a statement. He saw that he was overthrowing throughout the game. He just bided his time and he waited to get that pick number 7. It is the takeaways in the second half that drive this Packer team and really just put that nail in the coffin on San Francisco. Like you said, Neil, they had great numbers, great statistics, and then the 3 takeaways happen and they cannot get the points on the board. But this defense played really well, especially in that second half, even though it felt weird, it felt loose, but they made the plays at the right time.
It was really over the last quarter that they were starting to make plays as a defense. San Francisco actually only had 23 yards in the fourth quarter, -8 rushing yards in that fourth quarter. And then, of course, those 2 turnovers, only 2:36 time of possession in a fourth quarter. The Packers won 14-0. I think the only concern I had is that our offense seemed to sputter in that second half. And at one point, Jordan Love was 9 of 19 for 108 yards in the game. He was only 1 of 4 for 15 yards in the third quarter. And Josh Jacobs, only 15 yards on 7 rushes in that second half, although that did include 2 touchdowns. But there was definitely a sputtering of the offense where you sort of were hoping that they were going to just sort of grind the game out and prevent San Francisco from doing anything. But thankfully, yes, as you said, there was that complementary element that the defense made those big turnovers.
Well, let's talk about Quay Walker for a second. As you said, John. So after the Chicago game, we're going, wow, what is going on? So San Francisco game, he shows up. He's the co-leading tackler with 7 tackles. He has 2 tackles for loss and a pass defense. He was all over the place. He was flying around for as many games as he had been seemingly a step slow or just out of position. He was always seemed to be Johnny on the spot in the San Francisco game.
The post-game comments that we got on Quay Walker is that he tends to overthink, where sometimes you maybe see the paralysis by analysis or over-analysis on his part. Maybe that is what was going on in Chicago. The San Francisco game showed him, like you said, Jeff, maybe not reckless, but just being loose, right? Letting instinct take over, getting to your spot and making your play. But it really was a nice opportunity for Quay Walker to turn that corner and show why he is the pick that the Packers made him.
Yeah, and I just one other number, just talking to the defense, really the only person that beat us as far as the San Francisco offense was concerned was George Kittle, 6 receptions, 82 yards. But Jennings under 50 yards, McCaffrey under 40 yards receiving, Debo only a single reception, Yushik only a single reception. Yes, they had some players missing. They actually had 8 starters missing, but no, you know what? We took care of those stars that were still there.
You know, I want to bring up I don't know if we want to like christen them already, our special teams instead of the ass hats. So McManus had a great game. He was 1 for 1 at field goals. It was a 51-yarder, but perfect on extra points, 5 for 5. So when our kicker, when McManus goes out there, I don't get the pucker anymore. So I'm
a punter. You don't feel bad about punting, right?
Yes. So there's this like kind of confidence, like, okay, this is going to operate how it's supposed to, and no goofy shit hopefully is going to happen. And fortunately, there's been a number of weeks now where goofy shit hasn't happened, thankfully.
Once again, the final score in that San Francisco game, 38-10. A couple of interesting facts about this. In Kyle Shanahan's tenure as the San Francisco 49ers coach, this was the 3rd worst defeat that the 49ers have suffered in 28 points. And in the entire history of the Packers versus the 49ers, this is the biggest victory that either team has had, 28 points, Green Bay getting that 38-10 victory. Now, we talk about injuries with San Francisco, and this is a team they had to play on the road last week in Green Bay. Then they went on the road yesterday to Buffalo, 23 inches of snow, and it continued to snow throughout that game, Jeff. San Francisco loses this game 35-10. That's their 3rd consecutive loss, 2 games by a combined 73-20. Weather aside, they could not put anything together last night, and it was playground football.
Absolutely. And it was great to see. I mean, not only did I enjoy watching the Bills play in the snow, but just watching San Francisco just get crushed. That was great. I enjoyed it. And I'm sure the Bills fans did too, because what a spectacle in the snow last night.
Yeah, because you really want to kill off those San Francisco 49ers, because I don't want to see them in the playoffs with all 8 of those starters back in the game, and then probably have to play them on the road because we're likely going to be a wild card. Just kill them off so we have no chance of meeting them in the playoffs.
And Buffalo needed a statement game. This was it. At home, in the elements, against a team that is a playoff contender, and Buffalo just controlled that game, which is great. San Francisco, like I said, they're on the slide. When they get those starters back, Neil, maybe too little, too late for San Francisco. Nonetheless, for Green Bay, the 38-10 victory, one of those 2 signature victories that we needed on the short week. Now, again, it is deer hunting season. It's Thanksgiving week. It's 5 days, and Green Bay, for just the 3rd time in their history, is hosting a game on Thanksgiving. We still have a sour taste in our mouths, right, from 2015 and Chicago coming into town. So Green Bay really needed to make a statement with the Miami Dolphins, riddled with injuries throughout the year. Tua Tagovailoa is back. Miami is ready to play better. Green Bay comes away with a 30-17 victory, and Green Bay really had control of this game from the beginning.
Yeah, well, they took the ball first. So this is a recurring theme. You want to see them take that ball in the first quarter and really go with it. And it didn't start out so great with a 3-and-out. But guess who saved us this time? It's Daniel Whelan and the Asshats. And oh my word, was it beautiful to just go from that depressing start to the game to holy shit, we've got the ball inside their 10 and are ready to just kill it right there.
And that's what happened. And that was the only turnover of the game, which was huge, but that really turned the game because Green Bay, fortunately, again, in the red zone, as they had done against San Francisco when they were 5 for 5, they scored a touchdown when they really, really needed it to start the game off with a solid possession, even though it was 9 yards, didn't matter.
It's a touchdown. They scored the touchdown.
Yes.
With a great pass to Jaden Reed. And then Miami gets the ball back, and it started out not looking so great, but Miami got to a 4th and 26, ended up with a -3 yards on that second drive, and the Packers get the ball back and power the way straight down the field to a touchdown. It's 14-0, and we are still in that first quarter.
Exactly what we wanted to see. Another fast start, another start in the elements, and this is where Mike Daniels just looked cold the whole game. Jeff,
to be fair, it was really cold that whole game. It was much colder. It was an unpleasant game to go to. It was an unpleasant game to tailgate at because of the cold. It was a situation where the Dolphins definitely were put under stress because of the elements, and they admitted that after the game, that they weren't up for the cold weather.
Yep, which everybody ahead of time was like, oh, no, they'll be fine, and they'll adjust, and, the Packers don't have an advantage. And it was a huge advantage, as we found out not only later, but just watching the players, how the Packers were reacting. They obviously were in their element. There was a little snow to add to the excitement. It was fun to watch. But again, this was one of those where, it was a cold, damp night. So you had to cheer to keep warm, among other things, correct?
You did. The Move Those Chains gang was moving well in both of those games, but it was the team in green on the field that did the work. And it was just beautiful. In that first half, the Packers had 213 yards of offense to only 121 for Miami, 12 first downs in the first half for the Packers, and 4 of 6 on third down for the Packers. We were moving, and specifically in contrast to the game against San Francisco, it was our passing offense that was really moving that game. Jordan Love, 21 of 28, 274 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 sacks. The passing game was really going, and that's not what you expect in the cold weather. And that was a really encouraging thing to see, is that our passing offense was not impacted at all by the cold weather.
Well, 24-3 at halftime. I mean, it was just a blowout, basically. Miami was not functioning well at all. Our offense was moving great. Our defense looked good, looked fast, basically was shutting everybody down.
The drive that was most encouraging for that Packers offense, however, was when the Packers took the ball with 22 seconds left in the first half, and in 2 passing plays to Kraft and a run to Brooks, moved the ball down to kick a field goal to take it from 21-3 to 24-3, a 22-second drive. That was offensive efficiency. That was a team that was showing the ability to put plays together and to put a whole half together that we've not seen consistently all season.
But there are 2 halves to the game.
You're right. To be fair, Miami played a better second half. I think we expected them to wilt right at halftime with this weather. They really, you could tell, they did not look into it. Even in the stadium, we could tell. Jeff, you saw it on TV. They just somehow came back after halftime. Like maybe Lindsey Sterling inspired them to play better in the second half. I'm not sure what happened, but they came out and did well, relatively speaking.
I mean, they outscored us 14-6. Let's start out with that. And, definitely made it feel a little bit uncomfortable. Although, to be fair, the Packers did get another field goal to go up 27-3 before Miami started to really do anything.
It's that field goal, Neil, that I think really changes the scope of the second half. Green Bay gets 3 points there. And I think that from a feel, Miami doesn't feel like they're out of it. If Green Bay scores a touchdown on that drive and goes up 31-3 at that point, and it's a 28-point lead, that's almost an early third quarter dagger. but it didn't happen. And I think Miami felt that, and they felt like they had new life because of it.
Yeah, Miami's next three drives were all 67, 70, and 75 yards, scored 2 touchdowns, then taken out on downs on that. And Tua for the game had overall great numbers on paper, 37 of 46, 365 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And yeah, it started out with a lot of short to medium passes that Tua made to his wide receivers. And yes, that vaunted receiver corps certainly had an impact on the Packers defense. And yeah, in the second half, Miami had 254 yards of offense.
So the way the defense played that second half, from a fan's perspective, it's bothersome. You know, they play this umbrella. They play kind of, I don't know if prevent is the right word for it, but they just keep everything in front of them. And to Tua's credit, he wasn't going to try to win the game on one play, like we talked about the San Francisco game. And I think deep down inside, definitely I was rooting for Xavier McKinney to get number 8 on Thursday night. But the more I watched, the more I realized that Green Bay was giving them the underneath, and Tua was able to pick that apart. So once Green Bay realizes that their soft defense isn't going to work, that they can get picked apart by a good quarterback, I feel like they need to make that change. There were too many opportunities Miami had in the second half that potentially made this game closer than it was.
One of the things we finally saw, though, in the second half was the defensive line stepped up. They got pressure, finally. And that, I think, is what finally made a difference. I mean, yes, Miami was still moving the ball, but it really put them farther behind the chain. Tua was sacked 5 times in this game. Love, again, 0 sacks. Another huge stat. But once I think they started to get to Tua in the second half again, the quarterback's going to take what they get, what the defense gives. And that's what exactly was happening. But it was sort of a little too late. But it felt a little yucky. But when the sacks started to arrive, fortunately, that's when things felt a little better. Like, okay, maybe that this isn't out of hand.
Maybe, but again, Tua's numbers in the second half, 23 of 27 for 247 yards of offense in that second half, along with 2 touchdowns. That is a brutal number for the defense. I don't know, calling it prevent is the right thing, but it is not how the defense should be playing in those conditions.
Especially when they had completely given up on the run. Their leading rusher had 5 carries for 19 yards, Mostert. So they clearly gave up and were just passing every down.
And with that Miami offense too, Jeff, right there's again a difference between the first half and the second half, not only in the way maybe they're playing overall, but Tua's confidence and things like that, and his confidence in his receivers. I think Tyreek was targeted only once in the first half. All of his numbers came in the second half. He had decent numbers on the game, but the fact that they all come in that second half, again, gives you that pause. It's like, yeah, we had the lead. Yeah, maybe we had control, but gosh, it is no fun watching your team just give up pass after pass in front of everybody for 30 minutes.
I mean, they did have 4 receivers go over 50 yards and 2 go over 80 yards. So, I mean, that fits with the numbers that Tua had overall in the game, but especially Tua's numbers in the second half. But one of the problems we had is that we couldn't control the game on the ground when we actually had the ball. And again, our overall numbers in the second half were not terrible. You know, we had 175 yards of offense in that second half, but of those 175 offensive yards we had in the second half, 163 of them were from Jordan Love. Josh Jacobs had 8 rushes for 11 yards in the second half. That was all he had for rushing. Now, he did have that huge reception, but we were not running the ball at all effectively in the second half in either the San Francisco or the Miami game. And yes, our overall rushing numbers for the second half for the Packers were 10 rushes for 14 yards. I don't understand how that can happen in a game where you've got a line that has been good in rushing, in setting up the run, and where it's cold weather, where it's snow, and the snow really started in the second half, and you're not pounding the ball on the ground effectively. That was a little disconcerting, that we had to rely on Jordan Love having an amazing second half. And he did, 10 of 13 for 163 in the second half, but the running game was not doing it in the second half.
Yeah, and Josh Jacobs he's got 23 total touches and 117 yards total rushing and receiving. And it just didn't seem like it was a big game for him. He just did not do anything in that second half. I think there were times where I was actually kind of excited to see Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks out on the field. Like, oh, good, let's punch this one through or get a bigger play here. Jacobs, I don't know if, do you want to say the weather affected him? I don't know. But I think he felt trepidatious, I think, throughout that second half. And there was just something lacking on the offensive side as well. Again, you've got a good lead, but this is the personality of the Green Bay Packers. They do not blow teams out, just to keep putting points on the board and blow them out, with the exception of maybe that San Francisco game, passing still late in the game to get your fifth touchdown. Other than that, you just don't see them do that. And this Miami game is indicative of that, how they lightened up, so to speak, in the second half.
But I think that it is incorrect to put it on Josh Jacobs. I think Matt LaFleur seems to get, I said Mike LaFleur. Matt LaFleur gets conservative, he gets predictable at his play calling. And it happened in both the San Francisco and in the Miami games. In the San Francisco game, Reed had 3 receptions in the first quarter. Dobbs had 3 receptions in the second quarter, and neither of them did anything else the rest of the game. And in the Miami game, Wilson had 2 rushes for 20 yards in the first quarter and then didn't get another touch running the ball the rest of the game. Brooks had 2 rushes for 26 yards in the second quarter. Reed had a 23-yard run in the second quarter. But we really had no rushing attempts other than Jacobs in the second half. And it just seemed that it was just, they knew what was going to happen. And I think as much as anything, it's that predictability that I don't know exactly what it is, but clearly there's something that the defenses are seeing that is allowing them to key and prevent Jacobs from getting too many yards in these second halves when they've got a lead.
And this is when you'd expect Jacobs to sort of take over. If the defensive line is worn down, and a lot of running backs do have more success in the second half. And this is sort of the opposite for whatever reason. One area, though, again, that was consistent were our asshats. So McManus, 3 for 3 field goals, 3 for 3 extra points, no muss, no fuss. Perfect.
And Neil, I'm glad you mentioned Jaden Reed's 23-yard carry, because Jeff, we love the jet sweep.
Oh, jeez. That was effective because
right.
To be effective, you have to actually run it sometimes, Jeff. I think that you're kind of missing that point.
But the blocking seemed to be much better for him, and he's fast. He once he got the corner with the blocks, it was a much better play rather than getting bogged down in the backfield. But yes, I'm not a big fan of these things, as we've talked about, but when they're effective, I will grudgingly go along with it.
If we were X's and O's guys, I think this would be a play that we would look at, because you do have those 2 blocks downfield that really break him free.
Yeah.
Plus, he gets some yards after contact in that as well. He makes a cut, comes back into the middle of the field, and really fights for those extra yardage. And I think that it was a statement almost from Jaden Reed to say, hey, I want to do these more often.
The key is to be running basically rather than perpendicular to the line, to be able to turn that corner at speed. And when the jet sweeps don't work, they get strung out, and there's too many players there. You can't get the wide receiver can't make the cut and get upfield. Whereas that was pretty much textbook. And it was nice to see something different thrown in there, something that wasn't as vanilla as many of the other plays were.
I want to give one more shout out in the game. So Romeo Doubs did leave with a concussion in the game against San Francisco. And Dontavian Wicks, who's had a very up and down second season, certainly made some necessary plays in that game and very much stepping into the roles that the Dobbs would normally have. And it's good to have that suite of receivers where I would never want any of these guys on my fantasy team. Thankfully, I don't play fantasy football. So
nobody would care about your team.
No one would care, Neil.
But you never know who's going to step up, and the players were stepping up. Obviously, with Christian Watson, 2 huge plays as the downfield threat. And even if he may have dropped one against San Francisco, Watson, again, continuing to show his dominance in stretching defenses out and making big plays.
As long as we're doing a shout out, how about Quay Walker, 2 games in a row? So again, he was the co-leading tackler. He had 10 tackles in the Miami game, 1 sack, and 2 tackles for loss. two monster back-to-back games.
These weren't Blake Martinez 10 tackle games either. That's the thing. Like, he was making an impact in both of these games. It is really nice to see him hopefully turn the corner on this season and really start to figure out exactly what's involved in that Jeff Affley defense. And that is something that several of the players have said, is that there is a real adjustment to this different defense. We know in the preseason, they didn't give any looks that the teams were going to be able to use in the regular season. And the downside of that is, well, they didn't get practice doing the things that they needed to do at game speed. And now they're starting to get those parts together. And yes, there's some issues with allowing too many yards in second halves of game to short and medium passes, but the defense is definitely figuring some things out over the last few games. And that makes for a very exciting last 5 games of the regular season.
Well, one of the things I want to see the defense figure out, though, is where to line up, because lining up in the neutral zone when you put your hand down seems like a basic thing that you should not be doing. And yet penalty after penalty, it was weird. I think I texted you guys, like, they have a depth perception problem or something. Like, what's going on with these pre-snap penalties? And fortunately, Matt LaFleur wasn't happy about it either, because he commented about it post-game as well. Like, they can't have these stupid free 5-yard penalties, especially when the defense goes ahead and makes a good play and it gets nullified.
Yeah, definitely a potential for LASIK eye surgery for some players in the offseason, correct? Going back to those defensive numbers, though, 5 sacks altogether as a team, and a guy that I think that people wanted to see more out of in Kenny Clark. Unfortunately, he had no stat lines for a couple of weeks. Finally gets a sack in this game as well to add to his stat line. So it's nice to see Kenny in there making a big play too. But yeah, defense with its ups and downs, but when the ups come, boy, it's nice to see them.
Yeah, the swarming defensive line, the sacks, not every down, but man, when they get to the quarterback, it's fun to watch.
Neil, thanks for putting up the halftime picture. I'm going to tag myself in that picture. I can see where I was there. I actually did watch the halftime show, but it was kind of interesting. Like, when we saw the 2 halftime shows earlier in the day, they were like stage productions, right? These were concerts. These were people on stage. And Lindsey Sterling is a very petite woman, and she has 4 very petite backup dancers that are on the stage with her. She had a band that I have no idea where the band was. There was a sax player and a drummer, and apparently someone on vocals. I have no idea where they put these people in the stadium. But Lindsay was out there playing her violin with her dancers. And when you're in the stadium, when you're watching it on the field, it was just this very tiny performance going on the grass at the 50-yard line. I caught myself watching the Jumbotron just to get like a better view of what was going on. And it sounds like for you at home, Jeff, you missed it altogether.
They showed it basically as a bumper, like literally 10 seconds. That was it. There was no production like the other 2 halftime shows. So if you're, on NBC and wanted to be a Lindsey Sterling fan, or she wanted to showcase her talent or whatever, yeah, no, it didn't happen at home.
I wonder if this is a decision from Green Bay management saying, no, we don't want a stage on the field. No, we don't want pyrotechnics. No, we don't want fans coming down to see their performance. They wanted something different. And, letting 5 people traipse around the 50-yard line is philosophically pretty in line with how Green Bay feels about that field. They don't want anyone touching it.
It's hallowed ground, John.
It is.
Hallowed ground.
And she was cold. She's very prolific on TikTok and her reels and things like that. So you can online find some good video of Lindsey Sterling at Lambeau Field with her commentary that her kicks weren't as good. They weren't sharp. They were all teasing each other about how cold they were. They all had the big blanket coming in and ready to go out with. But it was nice. We'll just say it. We'll leave it at that. It was a nice halftime show.
The light show is very nice. I enjoyed the line for the men's room for most of halftime.
I'm sure it was a very enjoyable line as well. And the final, again, 30-17, the Packers beating Miami on Thanksgiving Day. So that's the 2 home victories in 5 days, signature wins, huge part of the schedule. It bumps the next game to this Thursday. It seems like it should be a short week, but Thursday to Thursday, the team has a whole week. We'll talk about going to Detroit in week 14 in a bit, but 2 home games in 5 days meant 2 times tailgating. Neil, it was great to have you in town. You were there for deer hunting. and you made your way back and forth between your tree stand and Lambeau Field, which was nice. Did you actually see any deer?
I actually had a couple of beautiful encounters with some does. I did not see a buck all season, but I had a doe walk up to 25 feet away from me and just stare at me for a few seconds before saying, I guess I shouldn't be here. But
right. Did anyone in your group catch a deer this year?
We had a number of hunters who shot deer, including my 17-year-old nephew got his first buck.
Nice. All right. Well, congratulations there. And congratulations to him on his success. Now, as far as tailgating goes, we had a huge day. First of all, on Sunday, the San Francisco game, where we found out that we have a fan club. Yes, the GBC podcast now has a fan club. Kind of, I guess, started by our friend Sam. She goes by Anchors Away Sam online. You can find her wherever you want on social media. But she showed up, Neil, with one of your favorite things, friendship bracelets. Neil being the Swiftie that he is, yes, we had friendship bracelets. One says Green Bay Chat. She had some Green Bay Packers one. She even had one made up that said Lot 1 that she gave to one of our Lot 1 people. So it was very nice of her. So thank you, Sam, for starting up the fan club. We hope that it grows exponentially, and we look forward to more friendship bracelets. But the thing about this is I come back to how our world has changed since we were kids. Now, this online thing, this is great. We are so connected. Jeff, even though you didn't make it in, you still get to stay connected with us. I feel like you're still there with us in the tailgate party. And it's such a different world where we are now with social media and how we're able to put out content and how people are able to interact with us.
It's all the different people that you're meeting that you've met previously online or that you've seen previously online when you're in Lot 1 or whether you're in the stadium view. And it was just a really fun day. The game was 3:25, so there was a lot of time for tailgating, and people seemed to go into full tailgating mode for that San Francisco 49ers game. And we met a lot of different people. UK Packers had about 70 fans coming from the UK and Ireland to go to both of those two games. And the guy in the middle with the Daniel Whelan jersey, yes, he is an Irish person. He has a signed Daniel Whelan jersey. Daniel Whelan actually met with a number of the UK Packers the day before. And it's just great to be able to connect with different people. You know, we'd met Peter, obviously, previously also from that group, but it's just amazing how you can talk to all sorts of different people and build your friendships throughout the world.
Yeah, without the power of social media or what we're doing here with the internet, I don't think this happens. I don't think we meet these people. I think they make their way to the game. With what we do in the Lot 1 tailgate party, definitely a lot of that has really grown because of the internet as well. The diehard Packer fan group and its presence on Facebook, bringing Packer fans in, looking for what do I do on game day? Hey, the diehard Packer fan group has the information. They make their way to Lot 1. And again, that ball just kind of rolls and we see it, how it builds. And it's nice that we're getting that feedback from people as well who are there showing up. They're showing their appreciation for Scott and the tailgate party. And definitely they're showing their appreciation for their Packer fandom.
The content that you put out during the tailgating is fantastic. You know, you sort of tease, you got the disco ball, you've got the music, you've got the shot ski. You know, people want, when they see that online, you know, one, if they've never been to Lambeau, they certainly want to come to Lambeau. But two, then tailgating is like adult trick-or-treating.
Sure.
So you go to the tailgate and you talk with people and you adult trick-or-treat and you just experience the whole thing. And it's such a positive. So, and when it's put out on social media, whatever format, it doesn't matter. As long as you can see what's going on, as you can sort of, you know, feel almost what's going on, hear what's going on, that's what's going to draw people in. And it's about friendship. It's about just meeting new people and meeting new fans, whether they're Packer fans from anywhere around the globe or just from the opposing team from the next state over. Doesn't matter. It's there. Everybody's there to have a good time and make good memories.
Yeah, I mean, there was a good group of San Francisco fans for that game. There was a smaller group for Miami, but I certainly, especially at Stadium View, but also in Lot 1, had a lot of, I just enjoyed, as is the usual, talking to the fans of the other team. And that is, and the Stadium View and Lot 1 are sort of two perfect locations that people will gather. And because people are gathering, it's opportunities to mingle and just start chatting with all sorts of people that you happen to encounter. Again, some of whom are online, but much of which is also just organic chatting with other people. And that also includes talking with people that you went to high school with. So not so much an online thing, but doing shots with a number of different high school friends or people I swam with in middle school or whatever. A lot of the people who grew up in Green Bay will come back for Packers game, whether their parents had season tickets and now they do, or they just come to 1 or 2 games a year. You sort of have a mini high school reunion in the Lambeau Field parking lots and bars before and after games. And that's a lovely component too. So it's not just the online, it's all of the components that we have these multimodal approaches to talking with people at games.
The camaraderie of Packer fans is something that is impressive. And we've seen it with our now travels on road games as well. And it's not just lot one, Neil, but it is all over the place because I think each parking lot, each tailgate party has its own identity. And people who come back for games, they know where their friends are. So whether they come by us in lot 1, they go to lot 9, they go to Kroll's, they go to Stadium View, it doesn't matter. It's that ability to come back, to be in your town, to see your friends, to have that camaraderie that's going on. We're very appreciative of our friend Bill, as you can see in the picture there. Bill, thanks for coming out on Thanksgiving as well. He brought his family with him. And we just were chatting with him, Neil, like it had been the day before was the last time that we had talked to him. So it was great to have him come by. He gave us some pleasant feedback about the show. So now we have that burden on us as well. We've got to perform better because Bill's watching all the time and he's telling us that we're doing a great job. But it's that along with the Saturday, the day before the San Francisco game, we found out that one of high school classmates had passed away. We're 54 years old. We're not ready for this. 54 for us is too young to be passing away. So it's these opportunities to be home and to see the people that you grew up with, that you share memories with. As we get older, right, we see each other at weddings and then we don't see each other for a while and then we see each other at funerals. I don't want that. I want to see people at Packer games. That's why I love being there. I love it when you guys are there. This is fine, seeing you on a screen. Nothing beats having you there in person.
Yeah, there's something about a place that you can call home, and Lambeau Field is a place where we can all call home.
John, that was really well spoken. And yes, 54 is way too young, but you know what? We get to come home very often, and hopefully we'll continue to see lots of people back home, and this will continue for many, many years to come.
And the great thing is it was Thanksgiving, right? So we gave thanks to the people who did come by. So to Bill, our friend Dean, Brenda and Andy, Neil, you saw Jill. Your brother was there. He had his pants on, which is good. I'm sure your brother saw his friends. You mentioned your cousin saw his friends. Any day in Green Bay is a great day. With that, there's a guy who makes it all happen. And it is my friend Scott. So the big news on Scott Schwartz, he has been hosting the Lot 1 tailgate party for over 30 years. It is his brainchild. He is the guy who puts this party together. It's his truck. He is the guy who stands in line 3 hours before even the 4-hour window in which the parking lot opens up. He gets the party started. He makes the Grandma Lambeau's apple pie. He provides the warm-up music for us and has created this atmosphere in Lot 1. Scott, a few years ago, got inducted into what is called the Tailgating Hall of Fame. That's an organization out of Detroit by a guy named Hans, put that together. There are actually 2 Tailgating Hall of Fame members in Green Bay, the Lot 1 tailgate party put on by Scott, and the other is the Lambulance, a ambulance that has a lot of Lambeau Field depictions to it. A lot of that is driven by Scott, also our friend Joey over at the Die Hard Packer Fans group that brings people together to Lot 1. But the big news for Scott is that he is being nominated for the Green Bay Packer Fan Hall of Fame. So you might be familiar with the Packers Hall of Fame. And the Fan Hall of Fame started in 1998 when a guy named Mel Kanoki was the first inductee. They currently have 26 members. Our friend Pat, his dad Alan, a longtime concessionaire at Lambeau Field, is also in the Packer Fan Hall of Fame. And we are very excited to get Scott nominated. There was a 500-word essay that had to be put together. So my friends Justin and John helped put that together and sent that in. So now we have to wait and see where Scott ends up in the nominating process. But as far as Packer fans and Packer game day, he makes it all happen in Lot 1.
Scott is absolutely the host with the most, and it's great to see Scott honored. He always makes everyone welcome when he's there, and it's the party that it is because of Scott's organization. And I was just wondering if the nomination letter was sent in a box just to really wrap everything up appropriately.
Cut a hole in the box, put your nomination in the box, and get the Packer Fan Hall of Fame to open the box.
Whenever I've been there, it's a hell of a party. Scott is the ringmaster. He is the keymaster. He's the straw that stirs the drink. And that is a perfect picture of him. Absolutely in his element, entertaining and welcoming all.
Scott and I, we're both huggers. So, we always embrace when I get there, when I leave. But I tell people when I bring them to the Lot 1 tailgate party, if you're a friend of mine, you're a friend of Scott's, and beware because Scott is a hugger. And my friend Ben actually brought me to the game on Thursday, and I brought him to the tailgate party and introduced him to Scott as well. And Ben just was able to acclimate himself. Everybody that jumps in there, they choose to take a role. Our friend Jazz, the Australian Packers superfan who spent 2019 going to every game, he comes back when he can. He tends bar. My friend Dak helps us out on the bar as well. Sheila and Kayla, our usual bartenders. Sheila's not there because she just had a baby. But we have this group of people, the girls that are always at the tailgate party who give me a hard time that I don't play new music, that I got to get them to dance on the tailgate and things like that. But everybody who comes by kind of has a role, and we have other people within that Lot 1 tailgate. Like I said, Scott's partner, Justin, who helps us out. He helps put a lot of the things together. John, who does some grilling. We have AJ and Spencer and Raina and Jen and all these people that they know their spot and they come in and they do it because they love it. And Scott is the guy who brings it all together. So again, Scott, best of luck. I hope to be sitting with you in that room when they announce the next inductee to the Packer Fan Hall of Fame. And with the anomalies in the Packers schedule, we had the 2 games in 5 days, and now it's going to be nearly a month before we are back in Green Bay tailgating. But before that happens, we have to handle some road games. Again, it's not really a short week because Green Bay played on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. It is the rare Thursday to Thursday matchup. Both Green Bay and Detroit played on Thanksgiving Day. Green Bay heading to Detroit to play here in week 14. And Detroit, a team that has just been steamrolling everybody, and Green Bay looking up in the division at them. We have the 4th best record in the NFC, but somehow we're still in the 6th seed. So that means we have our work cut out for them, and it starts this week in Detroit.
Detroit has won 10 games in a row, right? This is a team that has juggernaut components to it. And that juggernaut component is demonstrated by the fact that they are number 7 all time in DVOA after 12 weeks of the season at plus 43%. And the teams ahead of them are like the 85 Bears, the 98 Broncos, 91 Washington, 95 Dallas, teams that won Super Bowl. I think the encouraging thing is, while there's also those 2017 Patriots and a number of other teams that did not win Super Bowls, including teams like the 2004 Philadelphia Eagles. So I think that the thing that Packers fans are hanging their hats on, first of all, obviously, is we're going to be fully motivated for it, but perhaps that the Lions have shown that they're maybe not as complete as they sometimes appear. And you guys both watched the Bears-Lions game, and there was definitely weaknesses within that Lions team that you saw.
Yes, but with every weakness, they seem to be able to overcome. That's the thing. Whether it's by luck, whether it's by a bounce, it's a bad decision on the other team, they always seem to be getting bailed out somehow. And there's just some things you almost can't go against. So what you have to do is you have to play fundamentally well, not make stupid mistakes, and just stay on them. They're going to go on 4th down a lot. They're going to just do things that are a little bit more unconventional, but it's been working for them, and they believe, and their coach believes. And so that's one of the things that makes this team so dangerous.
Well, the final score isn't really indicative of how things went. This Thanksgiving Day with Chicago, Detroit really did what they needed to do against a lesser team. They handled them. It was 16-0 at halftime. 23-7 at the start of the 4th quarter. Chicago was able to work their way back into this game and really make something of it, where as Packer fans, would it have been nice to see Chicago get that win on Thursday? It would have been great.
Yes.
But then Chicago does what Chicago does, ends up really just pissing it away at the end to the point where they lose their head coach because of it, which is a shame because it should have been a foregone conclusion that Detroit was a better team, and they really did control that game. I think that it's unfair to Eberflus that he loses everything for this end of the game, but it's not just that game. I think it happened a few other times, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks before against the Packers.
Yeah. So Chicago continues to falter, but Detroit just keeps finding a way to win.
The thing about Detroit, though, is you look at the DVOA numbers and you say, wow, this is something that they should be first in basically everything. And if you look at yardage stats, though, the numbers are actually not that different for Detroit versus Green Bay. Detroit's second in yards per game at 395. The Packers are third at 383. You look at defense, 10th versus 13th in yards per games. Pass offense, run offense. The two teams are actually really well matched. They do obviously have a better ability in actually converting all of those yards into points. They are first in points per game scored, and they're also really good at converting when they need to. They are fourth in third down percentages. So there are a lot of things they do well, but the differences between these teams are not as great as they might appear if you're just focused on the overall record and DVOA. And I think we're going to be in for a very fun game.
Yeah, this is a team that has scored more than 40 points 3 times, 42 at home against Seattle, 47 at Dallas, and then scoring 57 twice against the Titans and against the Jaguars. Now, you can look at that as saying, yeah, maybe those are lesser teams. And so what happens with Chicago and you only win by 3? Again, I think this is a team that I think that they're playing for that number 1 seed, but there may be times where I don't say they're playing down to their opponents, but I think they're taking a little bit of time off, kind of like what we talked about with Green Bay, where they not playing as hard in the second half of some of these games. And I think Detroit is doing that to an extent, but they are still, I think they keep the fire underneath them and they are still looking to win out on this schedule.
Well, that's why this is a must-win game, I think, for Green Bay, because they can't afford to lose twice to the Lions. They're going to be too far down in the playoff seedings, and strange things happen. Let's just get things right, go into Detroit like we did last year on Thanksgiving and sort of shock Detroit. I mean, I think Detroit last year sort of took us too lightly for Thanksgiving. I don't necessarily think they're going to take us lightly again, considering what both teams are playing for, but we really need to put it together. No stupid penalties. Keep the asshats not being the asshats, uncharacteristically good, sound special teams, defense, and Goff will make mistakes. He throws interceptions. He throws when he probably shouldn't sometimes, but he's been hyper efficient. We can get some pressure on him. If the defense, hopefully they won't have to carry the day. Want to see a really good offensive front as well here, but I think this is an absolute must-win game for Green Bay.
It's a must-win game if you think they must win the division in order to make the noise that we think that they can make in the playoffs. My heart definitely thinks that this is a game that we should be able to put the pieces together. I think if all of our pieces are moving in sync and we play four full quarters of football, don't make mistakes, our offense plays it the best it can, our defense does. And specifically, we know Matt LaFleur likes to throw wrinkles. We know Jeff Hafley likes to throw wrinkles. If they've been saving some wrinkles, now is the time to let those wrinkles out. I think that we can, and my heart says that we are going to. I'm not as confident with my brain that that's going to be the case. I'm also certain that even if we go into the playoffs as the 5 or the 6 seed, that we're going to be just fine, and we're going to learn something about the Detroit team in this game. And one of the things we're going to learn is that it doesn't matter how much the media is talking about how great they are. They are a team that we are going to be able to beat, and that we will have a confidence to beat them in the playoffs if we need to do it for the first time or if it ends up being a second time in the playoffs. And I think that we are going to see a very inspired Packers performance. I think it's going to be a great game between these two teams.
Well, I guess that means I get to be the contrarian on this one. Detroit has 1 loss on the season. Philadelphia has 2. I think Detroit is playing for the number 1 seed. I think they want the bye. They want the home field advantage. They want the easy route to the NFC Championship game. They are going to be playing to win. When you look at Green Bay's final 5 games, plus what Detroit and Minnesota have for the final 5 games, it's a hard task to say that Green Bay could win the NFC North and end up with, at best, probably the 2 seed, right? So looking at this game, does Green Bay want to beat themselves up here and throughout the next 4 games after that to try to get to that 2 seed and host a game in the postseason? I'm going to say no on that one. And the reason why, again, I think Detroit is coming out to win. I think they want to make a statement and they want to have this win and they want to hold on to that 1 seed spot. The other thing, too, looking at what Green Bay's remaining schedule is, and Neil, as you said, where they are currently, are they in the 5 or 6 seed? I don't think Green Bay is going to put anything more than vanilla on the field on Thursday. I don't think they want a lot on tape on how they're going to play this Detroit team, knowing that they ideally are going to play them again in the postseason. So I think that Green Bay is going to hold their cards to the vest. They're not going to put as much on the field as you might expect, again, outside of the vanilla. And my reasoning on that is I think that they're content where they're going to be in that 5 or 6 seed. You still have Minnesota on your schedule. Minnesota very easily has 3 more losses on this schedule. So could Green Bay move up to that 5 seed? Yes. But either at 5 or 6, you're looking at playing either the NFC West or the NFC South, which both seem like nice destinations when January rolls around, right? Other than Seattle. So I think that they have the perspective of a decent road game in the playoffs in January. What's the reward for the number 2 seed if they can get that far? It's hosting probably the Washington Commanders. That's not an easy task either. So again, I think Green Bay goes complacent on this one. I don't see a Packer victory on Thursday. This is one that I had picked as a loss at the start of the season. I'm going to stick with that, but then expect Green Bay to finish strong with Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, and Chicago. And again, ideally getting up to that 5 seed, going on the road, and then not seeing Detroit until the NFC Championship game, again, with not as much on tape for Detroit to prepare for.
John, I'm going to disagree with you on that. I agree with your prediction that the Packers are likely going to lose. If I were going to put money on this game, when I put money on a game, I always go with my brain, not with my heart. The money would be that I would put it on Detroit winning this game. But I think the Packers have to try to go after this as a victory, because if they don't, to me, they're just going to lose in the wild card round of the playoffs. That is a loser's mentality to say, we don't care about being the top dog in our division. If that's your attitude going in, your team is not going to do what you needed to do the rest of the way. And so I expect the Packers to go all out.
Yeah, I will caveat that. I do have concern that if you're not playing to win, you're going to get injured. And that could be not a good result either. But like I said, it's not that I don't think they're going to play to win. I don't think they're going to play to show a lot of their cards. Like I said, I think this is going to look like what the preseason did. Just a lot of vanilla looks.
That's not playing to win then. That's not playing to win then.
That's just getting through the game. I don't know. I think that there's enough, they're talented enough where, so I don't know if what you're saying is like if they just execute well, that they've got a chance at it with some basic plays. No, certainly Matt LaFleur has demonstrated over his time in Green Bay that he can be a very creative play caller. If they can put more content out there, maybe quite the opposite will happen. Then defensive coaches will have a bigger headache. Like, okay, what do we do with this? No, I really think, is this their Super Bowl? No, of course not, because they will meet again. But this is an important game, and I think they really need to play. The prime people have got to be excited about this game because most of the Thursday night games are turkeys. It's on a short week, and they're just oftentimes not very entertaining, or the teams are not very good, or a combination thereof. This is neither. So this is going to be an exciting game, and I think Green Bay, yes, will come out. They have to come out well prepared, and I think it's going to be a close game. And I really think that they can do it, that they can win.
Jeff, I want you to say it like Herm Edwards. You play to win the game. Say it, Jeff.
You play to win the game.
I agree. Yes, I know you play to win the game. Like I said, something about it. I think that Green Bay is playing for the rest of the season, and I think they'll be content in the 5 seed. Neil, I know you don't like that.
No, I think it's a terrible idea. I think if we lose by 3 or 4 touchdowns, I think that you might I wouldn't say give up on the season, but I think that you're in a really tough position because if we play them in the playoffs, that is going to be a huge mental burden if we lose to them twice in the regular season by at least a 2-score margin.
Yeah.
Oh, agreed. No. Be the goldfish, Neil. Like Ted Lasso says, be a goldfish. Forget about that regular season game when the postseason rolls around. So we'll be talking about Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, Chicago, kind of how things shape up. Like I said, I'm taking Detroit on the victory this week. Actually, I think from our original preseason predictions, both of you had Detroit wins here. Are you sticking with that?
I do. I mean, I think that Detroit is the better team. Again, Head says that Detroit is probably going to win, and I hope that if they do win, it's a 3-point or 7-point victory, something where the Packers and Detroit play it tight, and it's going to be some plays down the stretch that make the difference. And I'm hoping that we see a next level of Jordan Love in this Packers offense and of this Packers defense that gives us the victory. But yes, I think the most likely outcome is a close loss in this game.
So I had the Packers winning when they faced the Lions in Green Bay and losing in Detroit. You know what? Detroit came in, took care of business in Green Bay. So Green Bay needs to return the favor back in Detroit.
All right. So you're taking a Packer victory this week.
Yes.
All right. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit subscribe, leave us a comment, visit us at the Lot 1 Tailgate Party, or find the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat. That is all one word. We are on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And we are on Facebook at the GBC Podcast Green Bay Chat. And like I said last week, we're now on Blue Sky. It's growing, Neil. Don't worry about it. You can follow us on any and all of those social media platforms. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.